On the surface, marksmanship can seem complicated, but marks can be easy to pick up if you know what to look for and do very good damage, especially in dungeons. The first thing to talk about for marksmen is the procs. Your auto shots proc marking targets, which make your focus generators, arcane shot, and multi-shot apply Hunter's Mark to the target that they hit. When a target is Hunter's marked, you can use Mark Shot, which hits all marked targets. Every enemy hit by Mark Shot gains the debuff Vulnerable, and Vulnerable increases the damage of your main focus spender, Aim Shot. True Shot is Mark's only cooldown. True Shot gives you haste and causes your generators to always apply Hunter's Mark. There is also an artifact trait that makes your True Shot give you 50% critical strike damage. Wind Burst is your artifact ability. It leaves a trail of wind that increases movement speed for friends, and Wind Burst also applies Vulnerable and the trail does damage with artifact traits. Exhilaration is a nice self-heal. Bursting Shot isn't worth talking about. An aspect of the turtle is helpful for soaking some raid mechanics. Your mastery increases the damage of your spenders and the range of all your abilities. The increased range from mastery is more useful in raids than it sounds, and is one of my favorite aspects of the spec. I am first going to go over what talents you want for pure single target. Lone Wolf is the only talent worth taking in the first row. It removes your pet and other talent choices in exchange for 18% increased damage. True Aim is a stacking debuff that increases the damage of arcane and aim shot by up to 20%. True Aim might sound strong, but it's completely impractical in any fights where you have to swap targets. Post Haste makes disengage free you from roots and snares, which is pretty helpful. It also gives you a short movement speed buff. Patient Sniper increases the damage bonus of Vulnerable by 10% for every second that the current Vulnerable has been on the target. Gaining the most from Patient Sniper is what separates the Marks boys from the Marksmen. Binding Shot gives you and your group a good AoE stun. A Murder of Crows is a dot with a 1 minute cooldown that resets if the target dies. This talent should be taken for mostly single target fights, as it does not do nearly enough damage to be worth it on every encounter. Trick Shot is a passive that makes Aim Shot cleave to all targets with Vulnerable for 30% of the damage. If there are no targets to cleave to, it increases the damage of your next Aim Shot by 15%. Marks is a lot of fun in dungeons, and most of that has to do with how bursty the spec and some of the talents are. Lock and Load gives your auto shots a small chance to give you 2 free instant cast aim shots. Explosive Shot might seem a little weird, but the amount of damage that it does makes it pretty fun. I have started to like using Patient Sniper over Explosive Shot in higher Mythic Plus, especially Tyrannical. Volley makes your auto shots take 3 focus and do an AoE around the target. This should always be toggled on no matter how many targets there are. Piercing Shot takes between 20 and 100 focus and does damage based on the focus that you spend to your target and half that damage to anything standing in between. For most raid bosses you want a mix of both single target and AoE talents. This build shown should be used on any boss that isn't almost exclusively single target. On the left is an ordered list of which traits to look out for on relics and how they compare to straight weapon item level increases, and on the right is how you want to spend your artifact power on traits 36 and up. Marksman's single target rotation revolves around the talent Patient Sniper, which rewards you for spending your focus on aim shots near the end of vulnerables. It might seem complicated at first, but it is made a lot easier with add-ons and knowing that it can be made into a set rotation. First, you want to have at least 70 focus, or 76 if you have volley, before you mark shot. After casting mark shot, you can fit in 1 arcane shot, then do 2 aim shots in a row. Depending on your haste, you might have to wait half a second before starting the double aim shots, because you want the second aim shot to end casting when the duration of vulnerable is under 1 second. Doing those 2 strong aim shots should be your number 1 priority on single target. Number 2 is using Wind Burst on cooldown. Because there is a cast and travel time on Wind Burst, you can cast it to apply vulnerable with at least 50 focus, do 2 arcane shots, then the double aim shots. After you have spent the focus on aim shots, you spam arcane or multi-shot to build your focus back up to where you can apply vulnerable and do your aim shots again. You can use the mark shots as you get them during times of heavy movement, but for the most part you only hit mark shot when you have enough focus to arcane shot into double aim shot. You never want to cast an aim shot into a target that doesn't have vulnerable unless you are getting really unlucky and are above 100 focus with no procs. Because you do so little damage without mark shot or vulnerable, and you can't build focus without spending the proc, there are situations where you just have to stand there and do nothing for a few seconds while you wait for a new priority target or AoE to spawn. With big haste buffs like Lust, you can add a second arcane shot in before the 2 aim shots. This means you can mark shot pretty much as soon as you get it. If you're going to cap on focus, you can do one of your aim shots before you do your arcane shot. If there are 2 or more targets, you want to replace Arcane Shot with Multi-Shot in the rotation. If AoE is the priority, use the Mark shots as soon as you get them. Mark's rotation has a lot of improv, and like all rotations you will need to spend some time practicing and learn how to play around your focus, haste, and movement. There are some well-known WeakAuras that guide you to get the most out of your patient sniper. Links to those WeakAuras are in the description. Marksman's rotation without patient sniper is much less about aim shot and more about mark shot. When you enter combat, marking targets will always proc on the first auto shot. When doing a new pull in dungeons, Windburst pre-pull, multi-shot once you get the proc, mark shot, then use piercing shot once vulnerable is up on all targets, followed by explosive shot. Without patient sniper, mark shot does about as much damage as an aim shot, so you want to use mark shot as soon as you can and only use aim shot to prevent capping on focus. Try your best to never waste a proc on AoE. The damage that marks can do in dungeons is some of the best in the game. And even though you have to stand still to cast aim shot, you are incredibly mobile, with half the rotation being globals and having disengage off the global cooldown. Because of Convergence of Fate, both the 2-piece and the 4-piece, and legendary boots if you're lucky, a lot of your damage comes from your cooldown true shot. Before each true shot you want to be as close to max focus as possible and have vulnerable up on the target. After popping true shot, spam as many aim shots as you can into the target before vulnerable wears off. Refresh vulnerable, arcane shot a couple times to get some focus, and spam more aim shots to finish off the true shot. This is the least structured part of your rotation and will take some time to get the feel of when to apply the second vulnerable and to start using aim shots over arcane shots. The goal is to end each true shot with as little focus as possible and as vulnerable as falling off. The artifact trait Bullseye gives an up to 30% crit buff from targets under 20% HP, so if the boss is nearing 20% health you want to save true shot for when Bullseye gets stacked up. True Shot is a much better cooldown for AoE because every multi-shot applies a mark shot, and you should use True Shot on trash and dungeons over saving it for bosses. If you don't have Patient Sniper, spend True Shot much like you would on AoE. Get as many mark shots out as you can, and use Aim Shot to spend your focus. For the opener, if you are talented into Murder of Crows, use that on the pull, follow that by Windburst. If not, Windburst a second before the pull. True Shot right before Windburst hits the target. Follow with an Aim Shot to dump some focus, Arcane Shot to mark the target for later, gain focus, and time for vulnerable, Aim Shot until you're out of focus, Mark Shot, Arcane Shot spam to around 100 focus, then finish out True Shot with as many aim shots as you can. The opener will change a lot depending on Lust, Talent build, 4-piece, and Lock and Load procs. If you were using the AoE build, the opener is much simpler. Windburst before the pull, True Shot before it hits the target, Aim Shot, Piercing Shot once vulnerable is up, build some focus, Explosive Shot, now alternate Mark Shot and Arcane Shots, use Aim Shot to dump focus. Stats are pretty straightforward for Marksman. Mastery is the best secondary stat, followed by Crit and Verse. Lastly, Haste, which I really don't like because more haste might lead to having to wait half a second before casting aim shots with Patient Sniper. Because of how strong True Shot is, the Trinket and Tier set are a must. The 4 set isn't the most amazing thing for dungeons, but it helps with single target. The best legendary for marks is the boots. They further add to the reduction of True Shot's cooldown. The second best is either the gloves for single target or the belt for AoE. The belt is very strong when there are multiple targets to buff your aim shot with. I consider Addons to be the next best legendary. The mark shot ring is poorly designed and worthless on single target, and the bursting shot bracers aren't worth talking about. The absorb from Addons is sorely underappreciated and incredibly powerful on progression. The most helpful add-on for any class is WeakAuras. For marks, the easiest way to master the rotation with Patient Sniper is with a vulnerable tracking WeakAura that shows you when to start casting aim shots to get the most out of your vulnerables. I made a focus bar WeakAura that is similar in that it has markers showing where you should cast mark shot or aim shot before capping focus. Links to both of those WeakAuras are in the description of this video. Marks is sort of a weird spec in Legion. There are aspects that go against the norms of other rotations like ignoring and overriding procs, and not putting too much emphasis on capping your resource. AoE in dungeons is about as good as it gets, though I don't agree with a spec having uncapped AoE that hits as hard and as often as Mark Shot. Despite the quirks, I enjoy playing my Hunter. The mobility and increased range play a big factor in that enjoyment. And possibly the biggest win for the spec is that with Patient Sniper, you get about as close to the feeling of lining up and taking a shot as you can in WoW. I hope this video has helped you, and thank you for watching.